And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to the Melanin Initiative podcast. I'm Dr. Kimberly Madison, a doctoral prepared nurse practitioner and one of your co hosts for the Melanin Initiative. In healthcare, there is often too much information and not enough time. Here at the Melanin Initiative, we avoid TMI. By breaking things down into language you can understand, we create a safe space to ask your questions and share a nursing perspective without taking up too much of your time. As you know, I do this show with my colleagues and dear friends, Alicia and Geraldine, who send their love in their absence. All month long in October, we dedicated every episode to breast cancer. We have a couple more left today, and then my mom's going to come back to her final episode on faith and medicine. And we want to just thank our guests and for all of your support, all the positive feedback we've received, really touching and heartfelt stories, personal stories, people going through breast cancer right now or their family member. And we don't take that for granted. We're very grateful for everyone who's come on this platform. We know you're touching lives and that's going to continue to happen, especially with the fact that people can come on YouTube or any podcast app and re-listen to these stories for years to come. We're really doing this show because so often people think that they're the only ones going through something, and that leads to suffering and silence. We know and hope through this show that you'll see you're not alone, and there are a number of resources available to help you. We hope you'll be motivated to do what you can when it comes to your health, to establish a relationship with your primary care provider who can talk to you about your risk as well as the available options. But most importantly, we hope you understand the importance of early detection, which we've emphasized over and over. We know knowledge is power, and so is having a support system and understanding the importance of advocacy. So often in Black and Brown communities, we get diagnosed too late, and by the time we do, the disease is so advanced that our options are much limited and the experience is that much more stressful. All month long, we've dedicated the episode to breast cancer, and it's gearing us up for season 2, which will be premiering on Tuesday for TMI Tuesdays at 10 a.m. We're coming back. All three of us will be on the couch to talk to you about one of our favorite topics next to health literacy, which is primary care. So make sure you like, follow, and share so you don't miss out. Today, I'm so honored. So we started the breast cancer series with Lori Lee, who was kind enough to share her mother's experience and then her own story in getting involved in Susan Jean Komen as an advocate. She went home and talked to her little sister, Paris, who in that episode, I gave her an invitation to come on the show. And honestly, I didn't think you were going to take it. And I was so surprised and happy when I got the email from Lori who said you wanted to come on the show. And so this is a true honor. It's going to be so interesting to be able to listen to both of your accounts because she was older and you were younger. But also, even when two people have go through the same experience, they take away a different perspective. And so it's going to be really interesting to hear yours. And so before we get into all our questions, welcome Paris Lee to the Melanin Initiative podcast.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for the invitation. And it's just certainly a blessing and a pleasure to be here to talk with you.
Oh, the honor is all ours. We really thank you for being vulnerable and being willing to share your story because we know it's going to really help people. And it might even save lives, really. Because when people see people who look like them, it gives them empowerment and it gives them hope. And sometimes that's all people really need to make decisions. So before we get into all the questions about your mom, just tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, and what you do when you're not on podcast.
Okay, sure. Well, as you stated, my name is Paris E. Lee. I am from Jacksonville, Florida, but I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I work for a company called Teen Care, where I serve as a curriculum developer. What that means is I help to develop training materials for classes for new hires and promoted individuals. But what I will say is, and I guess we'll move into this as we're talking. I'm blessed to work for Teen Care because I've been learning a lot about how healthcare and coverage works. So that's an awesome experience for me.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so yeah, why don't you go ahead and tell us your relationship with breast cancer?
Okay, so my relationship with breast cancer began through my mother. Um, I also, my mother's sister was diagnosed with breast cancer as well, but we didn't know a lot about the disease. We didn't know a lot about the cancer. We just knew that that's how our aunt passed away. And then 2014 is when it began. For me, I was home from college for the Christmas holiday. And, there are festivities, good food. We're watching movies as a family. And I just noticed that my mom was off to herself a lot. I really kind of isolated. She wasn't around us like collectively as much. And I saw her go into one of the areas, sitting areas, and she was sitting by herself. And I'm looking around, and I go and I sit with her, and I'm kind of like, why are you sitting by yourself? So we are talking as we always do when I'm home for the holidays, and something is different. And at the moment, I'm like, I'm watching, and she seems the same, but I just can tell something's different. I'm sitting across from my mother. I don't know what led me to do this, but I reach out to her as she's sitting across from me, and I touch her head. She had on a scarf, and I'm touching, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, she's her hair is gone, and I'm thinking, okay, she cut her hair. So my mom gets up and she walks out of the room, and she goes to get my dad. I go to my sister and I say, well, and my sister didn't know what was happening. And I say, why did mommy cut her hair? What's going on? Now I'm inquisitive. I have lots of questions. And my dad meets me in the hallway with my mom. And he's saying, okay, calm down, breathe. Before you say anything, just breathe and just listen. Now I'm getting frantic and I'm like, what's wrong? What's going on? And then my mom says, I have breast cancer. And that's a day I'll never forget. My world shattered because I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. And of course, I have more questions, but at this time, I'm just so stunned that I just don't say anything. And then as the rest of the holiday goes on, everybody's in their own space. And I'm trying to find a way to be strong for her. Although I was breaking down inside, like crying on the inside. And then when I speak with her, she explained that she was, I believe, in the shower and she felt a lump in her breast. And that made her um, go through a screening to see what the lump was. And it turned out to be cancer. They did catch it early, from what I remember. And then, of course, she had to start with getting into treatments. As we all know, breast cancer is not an affordable medical condition. It's very expensive. My mom was able to get some form of presumptive coverage so that she can at least start while she was trying to submit a full application to get coverage. Also, different laws vary by state, especially when it comes down to breast and cervical cancer and et cetera, and those wait periods for you to be able to begin to receive coverage. While I'm thankful that my mom was able to at least have something, it's still a long time, before she could even, and I think it was near the end before she actually had her full application to go through. So, yeah, that's where it began. She went through the treatment, she went through the chemo, she went through radiation. And I remember her going through those stages. Um, and she felt, I could tell she felt alone. Um, but one thing I tried to do, because we had a very close relationship, is to really be a place that where she could talk, be a sounding board. And I asked her questions about how she was feeling, and she was very open about it. And
What would
I
she say?
just,
What would she say?
she was talking to me about the changes that her body was going through, especially through the chemotherapy. Um, it was affecting, of course, her hair growth. Um, Also, like, but I will say, the when she went through the radiation therapy, it was very harsh on her body.
Mm,
Um, Her nails changed colors. You could tell she was going through it, by certain things, her skin, things like that.
mm,
Um, but she was a trooper
mm,
through the whole process, and she was determined to beat it. And when the doctor said, well, okay, you have breast cancer, you need to find out your options, and, you know, her going through that first round, she said, I'm beating this. I'm
mhm,
not going to just accept this. I'm going to fight this. And she did. So once she completed her treatments, I think it was maybe a year and a half, um, maybe close to 2 years, she was living without breast cancer. And I'm thankful for that time that
mm,
we had with her, because we were like, yes, like, this is amazing. And I remember when she would go to Gainesville, Florida, to get her treatments. And I remember she telling us, we went with her one day, about the bell that they ring when your treatments are done. And that was very emotional to hear about. And I learned a lot through her experience about it. Like, hands down, maybe I didn't understand all of the medical terms or the um, medicines and etc. But through her journey, I was able to get firsthand look at what that looks like and what she was going through. She had an opportunity to stay at the Hope Lodge during a portion of her treatments in Gainesville, Florida, and she always spoke about how blessed and how it really opened her eyes what people are going through, other
mm,
people. And she was like, it's not just me.
mhm.
There are people, once they get cancer, some stick with them through the journey. Others walk away and say, hey, I didn't sign up for this. So
Exactly.
I'm definitely thankful that my dad was there
Mhm,
the whole way through till the end. Um, Even taking time away from work to just take care of her through that experience, because you need a caregiver, you need support, you need resources,
you
you need
do.
all of those things as you're
Mhm,
going through that, those treatments, and even just emotionally and spiritually. Um, she kept a positive mindset. Um, so in 2000, I want to say 2017, I believe the cancer returned. And when it returned, it was metastatic at this point. So it was going to other areas of her body. Her lungs were affected. And I believe that's where it returned. It was in her lungs. Then it traveled to her bones, then to her brain at the end. So it was very aggressive, very aggressive. And I remember having a conversation with her one day, and she said, I wish I would not have gone through the radiation treatment. And I didn't understand what she was trying to tell me. She didn't come right out and say it, but I just listened. And then she, like, took off her shirt and showed me. She said, look, this is what this cancer has done to my body. So you and your sister, I want you to take care of yourselves. Um, Go and get um, your exams and all of that, because I don't want this, what I've gone through. I don't want you guys to go through that. So she was very transparent in some of it. She didn't want anyone to know. Um,
Like outside the family?
yeah, outside of our family unit, she didn't want anyone to know. She didn't want to deal with a lot of questions and things like that. And then once you started to see notices in her physical appearance, she kind of like moved into like staying home more and all of that. But yeah, March 6, 2018, she passed away in Gainesville, Florida, because the cancer had progressed to the point where they had to put her under sedation, and she never came out of that. So that was the journey with the breast cancer. Through my sister, she was so inspired to really get into the advocacy. But it started with her business. She was doing the Sister Strut. We did Sister Strut together, and the various walks that are available. And
And by her business, are you referring to Trisha's Precious Gems?
yes,
Oh.
Trisha's Precious Gems, which was inspired by our mom. And Lori is just so amazing, and gifted with her hands. And that's an outlet for her, but it also inspires other people, seeing the things that she can do in her journey and how she's moving forward. Because that's one thing that's hard to do. It's hard to move forward when you don't want to live without your loved one. Like, you want them here with you, um, but coming to that point of where you can take the next step and go on, that's a difficult step to take, and even saying that it's been 5 years sounds nuts because the time has passed, but it still seems like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
um,
you painted a very vivid picture of when you found out. And listening to your story is very, very heart touching. I want to just back up on a couple of things that you mentioned for my
mhm.
own clarity, but also for our audience, make sure they understand some of the things you brought up. You mentioned presumptive coverage. Can you just explain what that means?
So presumptive coverage is pretty much a temporary coverage. Say, for instance, you have someone, they're diagnosed with cancer, and let's say in this case it's breast cancer. There may be a full application, but that may take um, over 45 days to get processed. With presumptive coverage, it's in particularly with breast cancer, once you're diagnosed, they can begin to give you coverage until your full application is approved. So it's like a temporary coverage that you can get up until you decide to apply for the full coverage, or that you can receive until you're either approved or denied.
And I can't remember if we talked about this once we started recording or before. You mentioned part of your job that you have now is kind of increased your knowledge in this space, right? Because at the time this was going on, you weren't, were you that aware of insurance and how that works?
No, not at all. I was actually working in education at the time. And then over the course of, I think it was maybe a couple of years after my mom passed, that's when I started working with TNCare as a training officer. And so going through those training materials and really learning about how health coverage works, it gave me a lot more information. And I was like, okay, so I remember, certain things, certain, which was presumptive for her. Um, yeah, so it's definitely been a benefit to learn more about how coverage works.
Definitely. We'll have to go into that further on this platform. And then was she working at the time when she got diagnosed the first time?
Um, I don't think so. I don't think she was working at the time when she was diagnosed.
And your dad, was she on his plan or there was no insurance?
I'm not sure if they had insurance, if she was on his plan or not. I'm not sure.
Okay, that's okay. And then what is the Hope Lodge?
The Hope Lodge is a center that is sponsored by Winn-Dixie Stores, and they have them throughout the United States. And it's a center where if someone's going through treatments and cancer and etc., they can go and stay there through the duration of their treatments.
Hmm.
I want to say my mom was there for at least 4 to 6 months, I believe. I have to double check with my dad on that. So she, brought some items with her. You can bring someone to be there with you, and they said the Hope Lodge is great because they have activities for them. They have different groups, churches and fraternities, sororities, community services groups to come and sponsor dinners and programming and etc. for um, the temporary residents there. And it's really an awesome program. And my mom was really inspired with being at the Hope Lodge and just seeing how much they really care to be a part of that healing process. So that's the Hope Lodge. You can look them up online. And as I mentioned, although it may not be in every city, they're throughout the United States, Hope Lodges.
Thank you. We'll have to reach out to them. We'll have to do some kind of partnership, the Melanin Initiative and the Hope Lodge. And then I just want to cover a few definitions real quick. So if you haven't seen her sister Lori's interview, go back and watch it. In there, we learned that her mom was initially diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. It went away, or what we call remission, meaning that throughout all the testing, there was no evidence of breast cancer present. And then it came back, and at that point, she was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer. So the reason we emphasize early detection, because the earlier we get it, the smaller it is, and the more localized it is, meaning it's in one place, the breast. Once you start talking about metastatic or METs, that means other organs, your bloodstream, or even your bones are now affected, and now it's much more harder to treat. And aggressive. So aggressive means it's typically that it grows really fast. So maybe you had a mammogram in January, and then by November, you're at stage 4. Whereas someone else, they might have had a mammogram in January, and then in November, they're diagnosed and it's a stage 1. And so that would, in comparison, we might say, okay, this one's really aggressive. And we tend to see more aggressive cancers in Black and Brown communities. You mentioned the importance of a support system, but you also talked about how your mom was really hesitant to share her story. So what would you say to anyone watching who feels like your mom did, knowing also the importance of having people there to support you?
Well, I would say to them, number one, you're not alone. You have people around you, even if you don't feel like telling people, because like I think with her, she didn't want to deal with a lot of questions. And some people, when you tell them that you're sick, they go overboard. Some people don't want to be bombarded with all of that. So if you are someone who has been diagnosed with cancer, and even if you don't want to tell your family, tell someone. Have someone there to support you through the process, because you don't have to do it alone. Whether it's a friend of yours, someone within your community that you can talk to at your church. Um, However, have someone that can be there for you and talk to you, because you are loved, and the people who love you want to be there for you.
Beautifully said. And you know, a lot of those questions that people are asking, they really want to know one thing: Are you dying? Right? There's a lot of fear around that diagnosis and hearing that information, and a lot of it comes from lack of knowledge on what does it mean. You know, what's the staging? What are you going to have to go through? And then ultimately, are you dying? Is kind of where all those questions are often leading to. So during Lori's episode, she did reveal that your mom encouraged you all to get early early screening. And
Mhm.
you yourself mentioned that she had that conversation with you where she showed you what her body was looking like after treatment and how she really wanted you two to do whatever you can to try to avoid going down that same route. And
Right.
since Lori's episode aired, we have gotten a lot of feedback and support for you because Lori mentioned that you hadn't gone through any of the screening. Do you want to share where you are with that?
Yes, I'm in the process of getting my screenings done because although they said um, that my mom's type of cancer was environmental and not hereditary, we still should be getting those screenings done. I am 36 years old, and although they may have like an age limit on when you should begin your testing, I definitely recommend doing it early. So, yes, I'm in the process of getting my screenings and getting them done regularly because it's very important.
Wonderful. I'm happy to hear that, and our audience would be very happy to hear that. And so, just like you, my mom's diagnosis wasn't necessarily considered genetic. However, I have a really great relationship with my primary care provider, and so even before even though I didn't meet the age of recommendation, which is 40 to start mammograms and screening, she went ahead and ordered it anyway because of my history. And so it's just a certain way that you have to document in the chart that will get insurance to cover something, but your story is enough, to get that covered. And so you wouldn't have to come out of pocket for that, which is the case if you don't, if say the recommendation is 40 and let's say you don't have any family history and you don't have any pain and someone sends you to get a mammogram, you would have to come out of pocket because you don't necessarily meet the criteria. But like me, Lori, and Paris, we meet the criteria. So you mentioned that are new to advocacy. And also, we just had Dr. Dawn Mucci come on, who's also an advocate with Susan G. Komen. She's been in the game a little bit longer. And so it's going to be really interesting to hear how you, a newbie in the game, how your experience has been, and, just compare it to hers and share with other people. Because most of the time, what the other thing people want to do in our lives when they find out information is like, how can I help you? And a lot of times we feel very helpless because, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a surgeon, I can't fix you, I can't cure you. So then I feel really
Right.
helpless. And that might make me go into a corner too. But
Mhm.
advocacy is a great way to show support to the people we love as well as people that we'll never meet. So, how did you get into advocacy?
I was inspired by my sister actually. She was accepted, I think it was 2 years. And she went through a 2 year program, I believe, with Susan G. Komen, and she was telling me about it. We had a conversation, I think it was the end of last year or the beginning of this year. And she was telling me about what that experience has been like for her. And she was like, hey, you should apply. And I said, okay, I'll check it out. So I applied back in May and was accepted as an advocate to just kind of learn. And it's been a wonderful journey. I had an opportunity to go to DC back in June, and it was like a lobby day, and it was awesome going in and speaking with representatives and their staff about important breast cancer bills that we definitely need support for and backing for. And that is serious work. Seeing that, being convincing and really showing them why it's important. Some will say, okay, I think I want to help. Let me see what I can do. But others, I felt, didn't feel like it was a priority, especially in comparison to the other laws that they're trying to pass. So the person that I was with was very knowledgeable. And it was just the two of us going to uh, different offices and talking to staff members. And he went so in depth and explains so much, but it was just disheartening seeing some of the representatives just resistant. Like, okay, well, wow, I didn't really know this. And okay, thank you for sharing this with us. I'll consider it. And it's like this, we're talking about lives, people who are dying. We're not asking you to give us something that's impossible. We're asking for your support so that early detection can be more possible, so that treatments can be more affordable. We're asking you for those things. And that's the one thing that I didn't realize. When you hear cancer, people understand it's a serious thing. They just don't understand how serious it can be. So having that experience was important, and definitely inspired me to get more involved. So
And
it's
that
been good.
application, what is it they're asking for? Just like background information about you?
Well, they want to know, one of the things they want to know is what you know about breast cancer. What's your experience? And then that's, opportunity to share, well, my mother had breast cancer, or et cetera, or I work in the health profession, or I just want to volunteer because my friend or my aunt has gone through it. So they ask you about your story. They ask you about some of the things that you want to know about breast cancer and what you want to do to help. So usually, and I know for myself, I said I want to do whatever I can to help. I don't know what I can do, because a lot of times, like you mentioned, you have people that want to help, they just don't know what to do or what that process looks like. So I think just showing up is what's most important, and they'll just guide you on how you can help. I'll say that.
Yeah, in my experience, most advocacy groups, they have everything for you. What to say, how to stand, where to look, who to talk to, where to stay. Like they have a whole system in place. It's very inviting, it's very welcoming. And you mentioned so many wonderful points about that. In addition to advocacy, sometimes just standing there holding someone's hand, saying a prayer out loud or quietly, offering a napkin, offering a tissue, sometimes talking to them about your life just so they can think about something else other than what's going on in their life can be a great relief.
Right.
So before we close, I would like to hear what it is you're actually asking politicians to do when it comes to, I guess, providing funding so that people can get early screening or early treatment.
So the first step is asking politicians to first ask those important questions. What is breast cancer? And it was really interesting when we were in DC to have some of the representatives to ask us that, like, what is it, like, what really is happening? We're like, you don't know. So first of all, them being knowledgeable about breast cancer and knowing the numbers and why it's so important, number one. I'd say the second thing is being able to walk through the doors, because they can go through doors that normal day-to-day citizens may not be able to walk through. They have a voice for the voiceless, and if they just had the knowledge and then were knowledgeable about the bills that we need them to support, they could go in and speak on behalf of the advocates, and also the patients who are going through these treatments, and just say, hey, we need to pass this, because we're not asking for much. We're not asking for a lot. We're just asking for support with early detection program. We're asking for funding, so that it can be affordable, because this is expensive, very expensive. And if you're not, and that's the one thing, I'm glad you brought that up. We talked to one staffer who said, well, my grandmother had cancer, but she has a lot of money and fortunately was able to pay for her treatments. And that's another gap, because you have people who have the money who can pay for it, who can pay for the treatments, who are still living today. But what about the people who don't have that, who don't have the funds, and who don't have the resources? So, politicians, we need you to advocate for those who do not have the resources and do not have the funds, because they are the ones that are at a higher risk of dying, even more so than those who have the resources and the funding.
Thank you so much. Do you have specific bills that you're looking for them to support?
Yes, there are three bills. One is for early detection, and I don't want to butcher the names. But one is for early detection. There's another breast cancer bill that is, I think it's the ABCD bill. And this particular one has more of a dollar tied to it. Although there are three bills, I know one ranks higher in priority than the other two, because if we can get that one bill passed, the others, I believe, will follow suit after that. So definitely early detection. One has to do with screenings, and the other has to do more so with funding and the days to get the really speeding up the process to get the application approved, so that the patients can receive their care. So I think that's the bill that's a higher priority bill, I believe. Trying to get that process shortened, to get the applications approved to get the treatments done. So off the top of my head, I do apologize
That's
for
okay.
not having
Mhm.
the three bills memorized, but I do remember what each one is for. So
Yeah, just sure. You can always email them to me, and then I'll update the description box, and people can.
absolutely, I can send that information to you.
Yeah, and that's one of the things as advocates, you don't have to have everything in your head. We can always provide you packets and brochures and scripts and everything like that. So before we close out, you work with NAACP?
I do. I do. I work with the NACP. I'm here in the state of Tennessee. I serve as a branch secretary with my branch. And I also work with the Tennessee Youth and College. And that's actually how I started out. I was a part of the college chapter, and then moved on and joined a branch and worked with the State Youth and College. And it's been great. I've been a member since 2014, I believe. So a little while came through the Next Gen program, which was a 2-year program where we learned everything there is to know really about why the NACP is important. And I'm glad you brought that up, because the NACP actually is a part of that process as well, with advocacy in various areas. But health is definitely one of our issues that we focus on as well. So that's another reason that I've been inspired to get into advocacy as well with breast cancer.
Wonderful. And where'd you go to college?
Tennessee State University.
And TSU.
Yeah, TSU.
It's homecoming season.
Yes, we actually had our homecoming a couple of weeks ago, um, October the 13th, 14th, that weekend.
Mm. Yeah, I got my bachelor's in nursing from University of Memphis, so I love Tennessee. It's our second home, actually.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been in Tennessee for a while.
Yeah, and you're in Nashville, right?
Yep, in Nashville.
We'll have to check you out in person next time we're in that neck of the woods.
Absolutely. It would be great to meet you in person.
Oh, and definitely when you're back here in the district, just a phone call away.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, uh, I know that has been talks about the next lobby day. It's going to be in June of next year, 2024. So I'll be registering to attend.
Oh, great. Yeah, we might ask you to take some footage for us so we can share it with our audience. That'd be really
Yeah.
exciting. Anything else you want to share before I do our closeout?
I don't have anything else to share. I would just say, find out what you can. Stay hopeful and positive. Having a positive state of mind as you go through anything is essential to success. So I'd say stay hopeful, keep your faith, and stay positive. And if it isn't you who's experiencing breast cancer or going through that process, definitely try to be supportive for someone else and help someone else.
Thank you so much, everyone. Remember, everyone, this show is for educational purposes only. The opinions expressed here are our opinions alone. They are not a representation of any of our affiliations. If you're experiencing a medical emergency, you should seek medical attention and medical guidance from your healthcare provider. If you're having a physical emergency, you can call 911. And if you or someone you know is having a mental health emergency, you can call 988. Today, Paris Lee was kind enough to give us an even broader picture of her mother's journey with breast cancer. And it was so interesting to hear her vivid accounts of that time in her family's life and how it really touched them, not only in the moment, but continuously, how both sisters have gone on to continue to speak for the voiceless. We talked about the difference between metastatic cancer and early stages, as well as what it means to have an aggressive form. She shared wonderful resources that are out there, in addition to Susan G. Komen, as well as the Hope Lodge, and all the powerful work that can be done through advocacy. And it sounds like the NAACP is doing a lot when it comes to health for the community. She was kind enough to share her journey, and you were really vulnerable, and it was really, really heartfelt, and we just can't thank you enough for coming on here. And it's not lost on me that it's really easy for me to come on here and talk about breast cancer and to have my mom on here and talk about it because she's still with me. And so to hear you and Lori come on here and be so open and so candid, it's really special, and you're really providing a wonderful example on how to keep those memories alive and how to be strong through what can be quite painful and difficult to recall. So we thank you so much. Remember, everyone, you can email us your questions or show ideas to tmi.melanin@gmail.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Please share with your friends and rate us on both Apple and Spotify. It helps support the show, and it gets this message out there to those who really need to hear it. You can find all our social media links and all the important resources that we talked about today in the description box. We release a new show weekly on TMI Tuesdays at 10 a.m. here on YouTube and also on all your favorite podcast apps. We thank you so much for watching, everyone. See you in season 2. Thank you, Paris.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
The pleasure is all ours. Thank you.